You're about to be blessed. Have faith and watch what happens. Something is already shifting, not in the news, not in your bank account, not in the hands of people, but in the spiritual realm where your real future is written. And the reason you're feeling restless, the reason you're being pressed, the reason it feels like heaven is silent right now, is because you're standing at the edge of a blessing you cannot yet see. That tension in your soul isn't random. That pressure in your atmosphere isn't punishment. It's spiritual labor, because what's about to be born in your life doesn't come through comfort. It comes through faith. There are moments in your journey with God where nothing looks like it's happening, and everything feels like it's falling apart. And yet, if your spirit is even slightly tuned to His, you can feel something is approaching. It doesn't make sense on paper. It doesn't show up in the numbers. But there's this subtle inner stirring, a divine friction, a holy discomfort that refuses to let you settle. That's not anxiety. That's evidence. You are being prepared for something that's bigger than what your emotions can process. You're not just close to a blessing, you are inside the stretch of it, the space where your history begins to shift, not because circumstances are perfect, but because your spirit is finally aligned to receive. This is where most people give up. Not at the beginning of the storm, but right before the breakthrough. Because it's here, in the quiet, in the confusion, in the delay, that the enemy tries to convince you it's all for nothing. But hear this. The resistance you're feeling isn't the sign it's not coming. It's proof that it's already moving. God doesn't shout when He blesses. He positions. He orchestrates. He allows silence not to starve your hope, but to strengthen your discernment. Because what's on the way to your life isn't going to be small. It's not a temporary fix. It's a shift in your story. And if He let you see it all at once, you'd either run from it in fear or try to rush it with your own hands. So instead, He stirs your spirit. He removes old dependencies. He frustrates what used to satisfy you, not to punish you, but to prepare you for something you wouldn't believe unless He revealed it slowly. The problem is that we're often trained to recognize breakthrough only by what changes around us. But the first sign of true blessing is what changes inside of you. You stop begging and start declaring. You stop asking when and start believing soon. You stop reacting to circumstances and start responding in trust, and that's when something in heaven begins to unlock. Because you're no longer chasing a blessing, you're walking like someone who already carries one. God's blessings are never random. They are relational. He doesn't bless you to impress you. He blesses you to position you. So when He moves in your life, it's not because you've earned it, but because you've been postured for it. There is a timing to heaven's generosity, not because God is slow, but because He is wise. And He knows that what you call a blessing can become a burden if it arrives too soon. So if it hasn't come yet, it's not because it's not coming. It's because it's still being shaped to fit your capacity. Or maybe, just maybe, your capacity is still being shaped to carry the weight of what's already finished in the Spirit. That's the beauty of faith. It sees what hasn't yet manifested and calls it done. It stands in the gap between promise and fulfillment and says, I may not see it, but I'm still aligned with it. Some blessings don't knock. They test. They test your consistency. They test your surrender. They test your patience. And they wait. They wait until your heart beats in rhythm with God's will, not just His promises, because only then can the blessing arrive and stay. Only then can it produce fruit, not just flashes of hope. Only then will it not just look like favor. It will actually carry the power of transformation. That's where you are, in the middle of a silent move of God, where nothing looks different yet, but your spirit knows the shift is here. And even though your senses can't measure it, your obedience is building a landing strip for the very thing you've prayed for. So don't despise this season. Don't mislabel the quiet as absence. Don't call the delay a denial. You're not being tested to break. You're being stretched to contain something greater. This is not the end of your story. This is the door. And you're not just standing in front of it, you're about to walk through it. Because what's been assigned to you by heaven cannot be stolen by people, delayed by circumstances, or blocked by the enemy. It may be invisible right now, but it's not imaginary. It's real, it's moving, and it's coming straight toward you. There is a blessing forming right now that has your name on it, and yet you can't see it. Not because it's far, not because you're unworthy, but because some blessings are born in complete invisibility. Before they manifest in the physical, they begin as whispers in the spiritual. They move quietly through corridors you don't have access to. They are spoken over your life in rooms you're not in. They are being prepared behind doors you haven't been called to open it yet. And that silence, that lack of evidence, can make even the most faithful heart question if it's real. But that's where the beauty of God's process begins. He often conceals what he's about to reveal, not to tease you, but to test if you'll trust him in the dark. You've probably asked, "Where is it?" Or, "Why don't I feel it yet?" Because what you prayed for felt urgent. What you believed for felt overdue. But heaven doesn't move on the clock of human pressure. Heaven moves on the rhythm of purpose. And sometimes God keeps you blind to what's coming so that your faith grows eyes of its own. If you could see it all now, there'd be no need to believe. But faith grows when you can't trace, only trust. When you can't track the progress, but you keep praising like it's already yours. That is the space where unseen blessings begin to break through. Some of God's greatest works are completely silent until the moment of delivery. Think about the seed in the soil. It spends weeks, sometimes months, hidden underground. The roots dig deep. The growth is invisible. From the outside, nothing is changing, but underneath the surface, something unstoppable is forming. That's how God often works in your life. The silence isn't stagnation, it's setup. You are not being ignored, you are being rooted. Because anything that's going to last must first go deep before it rises. The enemy would love for you to believe that if you can't see it, it's not real. He wants you to link visibility with validity. But God's promises don't require proof to be true. In fact, God specializes in delivering breakthrough without warning. He lets the blessing come through an unexpected path, in an unusual way, at a moment that doesn't feel ideal, so that you know it wasn't random. It was reserved. That's why this moment matters, because your breakthrough doesn't start when it arrives. It starts when you believe it's already yours. You have to talk like it's done, walk like it's close, worship like it's already in motion. That's not denial, that's dominion. That's how people of the Spirit move. They don't wait to see to believe. They believe until they see. And here's the deeper truth. Some blessings are intentionally hidden because you are not meant to prepare for them with your eyes, but with your obedience. If God told you the full picture, you'd probably try to control it, rush it, or define it based on your past. But he doesn't want your management, he wants your agreement. Because what's coming doesn't need your help, it needs your surrender. There is a difference between chasing opportunity and being positioned by obedience. One wears you out, the other brings you into divine flow. One depends on your effort, the other on your alignment. You're not in lack, you're in hiding, and so is your blessing, but both are moving closer. Every act of obedience, every silent prayer, every unseen seed is building a bridge between where you are and what's coming. And even though you can't feel it, God has already marked the date. Heaven doesn't need to make announcements, it only needs to find agreement. And that agreement starts with you saying, "I still believe, even in the silence." So if it looks like nothing is happening, that might be the greatest sign something is. Your spirit is sensing it before your senses catch up. That subtle hope that refuses to die. That random peace that comes in waves. That sudden awareness that God is closer than your emotions suggest. That's evidence. Evidence that what's forming in the invisible is about to break into the visible. And when it does, it won't just feel like a blessing. It'll feel like God was preparing you all along for something only He could bring. God never delivers something He hasn't first prepared, not just in the world around you, but in you. Before the blessing arrives, heaven goes to work, not in chaos, not in a rush, but in divine order, because anything from God must be strong enough to last, not just shine for a moment. So while you think you're waiting, heaven is actually aligning. God is preparing the blessing, yes, but He's also preparing you to carry it without it crushing you. This is why so many people confuse delay with punishment. When nothing seems to be changing, when doors feel locked, when silence stretches longer than expected, we assume something's wrong. But God isn't delaying you. He's developing you. Because premature blessings can become unbearable burdens, and a gift from God at the wrong time doesn't feel like favor. It feels like pressure. That's why heaven doesn't just answer your prayers, it answers them in wisdom. You might think you're just stuck. You're not. You're being reshaped from the inside out. Your thoughts are being rewired. Your desires are being purified. Your character is being strengthened. Why? Because what God is sending can't be mishandled. He's not interested in giving you something that's supposed to bless generations, only to have you lose it in a season of emotional immaturity. So while you ask for more, He's testing how you handle what's already in your hands. Heaven's preparation often looks like resistance. You'll try to push through a door that won't open. You'll watch opportunities slip through your fingers. You'll see people walk away you thought were permanent. But if you listen closely, you'll realize something deeper is happening. God is pruning. Not because you're being punished, but because what's next requires a version of you that doesn't carry unnecessary weight. He's not just removing things, He's refining you to hold what He's already written into your destiny. When Joseph had a dream, he didn't go straight to the palace. He went to the pit, then the prison. Why? Because a dream is easy to receive, but heavy to carry. God had to prepare Joseph not just to receive the blessing, but to rule from it with integrity. That preparation wasn't punishment, it was positioning. And it's the same with you. What you're walking through is shaping the kind of soul that can handle promotion without it replacing prayer. Heaven prepares by exposing cracks before they become fractures. It reveals the motives that still need purifying. It brings to the surface what still holds you back, not to shame you, but to heal you. That's why you felt stretched. That's why old habits no longer fit. That's why what used to satisfy now leaves you restless. You're outgrowing the person you were because God is preparing the space for who you're becoming. And that preparation doesn't stop at your heart. It touches your surroundings. Sometimes God delays a blessing because the room you're about to walk into still has enemies in it. He'll wait until the atmosphere is clean, until the right people are in place, until the distraction is removed. Because your blessing isn't just about you, it's connected to others. He's orchestrating every layer so that when it comes, you won't be confused. You'll know this wasn't luck or timing or coincidence. It was divine design. So when the delay feels long and your spirit feels weary, remind yourself, God is preparing me because He trusts me. He's not withholding out of cruelty. He's waiting out of mercy. He's too wise to rush something sacred, too intentional to hand over power without protection, and too faithful to give you a glimpse of your future only to leave you stranded at the door. He's working even when you don't feel it. His silence is not absence. It's strategy. Every closed door, every slow season, every unexplainable pause is part of heaven's architecture, building something that won't fall apart when the winds hit. And when the moment finally comes, you won't just be ready for it. You'll be able to steward it, grow it, and multiply it for His glory. This is how heaven moves, quietly, strategically, faithfully, preparing the gift and the ground it will fall on, preparing the door and the heart that will walk through it. preparing the stage and the soul that will carry his name into it. You're not being delayed, you're being made ready. And when heaven delivers, it always delivers right on time. Faith isn't the finish line of your journey, it's the entry point. It's not the prize God hands you after everything works out, it's the door you walk through before anything makes sense. Faith doesn't come after the blessing shows up. Faith creates the environment for the blessing to move. And this is where many miss it, because we've been taught that if we believe hard enough, long enough, consistently enough, we'll earn the breakthrough. But faith isn't currency you spend. It's alignment you live in. It's not about working harder to believe. It's about resting deeper in what God already said. You don't receive favor because of perfect faith. You receive it because your faith opens the door wide enough for grace to walk in. Grace is the power of God that meets you where you are. But faith is what invites it in. So when your circumstances feel stuck, your emotions are scattered, and your logic can't make sense of what God promised, faith isn't a weapon you fight with. It's the door you choose to keep open. And sometimes, keeping that door open is the most powerful thing you can do. This is why the enemy doesn't fight your results. He fights your belief. Because the moment you begin to expect again, the atmosphere around you starts to shift. Faith doesn't need proof to act. It just needs presence. It says, even if I don't see it, I'm still walking. It says, even if it hasn't happened, it's already mine in the spirit. That's not delusion. That's maturity. Real faith doesn't deny reality. It simply refuses to be defined by it. Think about it. How often have you been tempted to shut the door of expectation because things didn't go how you imagined? You prayed and nothing changed. You obeyed and things got harder. You believed and were still disappointed. And every time that happens, a voice tries to convince you that faith is pointless. But the truth is, it's in that exact space, the in-between, the not yet, the tension between promise and fulfillment, that your faith becomes the very threshold of the blessing. God doesn't require you to have it all figured out. He asks if you'll trust Him anyway. Will you keep that spiritual door open, even when disappointment knocks? Will you believe His voice above your emotions? Will you stay aligned with His word, even when your timeline is being dismantled? Because the moment your faith stays rooted while your feelings shake, you are walking in spiritual authority. And this is what we often misunderstand. Faith is not measured by emotion. It's not the butterflies you feel when someone prophesies over your life. It's not the energy during a worship song. Faith is often quiet, steady, even mundane. It's the decision to keep obeying when no one is watching. It's the refusal to lower your expectations to match your disappointments. It's the strength to look at lack and still declare abundance. It's when you look at delay and still say, God is faithful. Every blessing you're waiting on is not earned by your striving. It's received by your positioning. You don't fight for it. You stay open to it. You don't climb toward it. You make room for it. That's what faith does. It expands your spirit to receive what your flesh wants to control. It anchors you to truth when everything else is unstable. And it silences the voice of fear long enough for the whisper of God to rise again. Faith doesn't demand clarity. It follows peace. It walks into rooms it wasn't invited into. It believes when everyone else has stopped. It stretches when others settle. And when it hears the word of God, it doesn't argue. It says yes, not because it understands everything, but because it trusts the one who spoke it. Right now, the door is open. The blessing isn't locked behind your performance. It's drawn to your posture. You don't need to know how or when. You need to believe that the moment you said yes in your spirit, heaven marked your name. What you haven't seen yet is still on the way. And the key is not how hard you pray or how loud you worship. The key is whether or not you'll keep the door of faith open long enough to watch what God already finished arrive. Waiting can feel like punishment, like you're forgotten, like heaven is distracted, like your prayers disappeared into a void with no response. But what if what you're calling waiting, God is calling aligning? What if the stillness that frustrates you is actually divine strategy, preparing everything necessary for your next season, including you? We're trained by culture to believe that if something hasn't happened yet, it must be delayed, that if the door hasn't opened, something went wrong. But divine alignment doesn't follow earthly logic. When God aligns, He's not just adjusting time, He's adjusting hearts, positions, atmospheres, opportunities, and even people's decisions. It's not just about getting you to the right place. It's about making sure the place is ready for you, and you're ready for the place. Think about how much God protects you from what you think you're ready for. You ask for the relationship, but He knows your heart still bleeds from the last one. You ask for the platform, but He knows your soul still trembles under the weight of approval. You ask for the promotion, but He sees how your identity is too tied to productivity, so He doesn't say no. He says, not yet. And in that not yet is a divine operation, where He heals what you didn't know was broken, and removes what would have silently sabotaged your blessing. Alignment doesn't look like movement. Often it looks like nothing, and that's why it's so difficult for those who are used to measuring progress by what they can see. But faith doesn't need visible results to know God is working. It just needs to stay rooted in trust, because God is always doing more behind your back than in front of your face. What feels like waiting is usually heaven reshaping the story, so it blesses you fully, not partially. So it doesn't just elevate you, but it sustains you. Joseph didn't know that his time in prison was part of his promotion. Ruth didn't know that her loyalty and obscurity would lead to redemption. David didn't know that tending sheep in the quiet would prepare him to lead a nation. None of them saw alignment while they were in it. They only saw what looked like delay, rejection, hardship, and limitation. But alignment often hides inside of disruption. God breaks what you were depending on so that He can build what you actually need. You may be asking why you had to wait this long, why the door hasn't opened, why the people walked away, why the opportunity slipped through your fingers. But there is a shift happening that can't be seen yet. And when it appears, it will make sense why God didn't let you settle, why He didn't say yes when you begged, why He didn't make it easier. Because alignment costs more than timing. It requires surrender. You can't walk in divine rhythm while dragging old attachments behind you, and God knows that. So while you feel stuck, heaven is synchronizing your life. And that's not a metaphor, that's a supernatural reality. Conversations are happening right now about you that you haven't heard. People are being moved into your path. Old systems are being shaken so new doors can emerge. And while you wait, your posture matters more than your pace. You're not waiting for something to happen. You're staying aligned with the one who's making it happen. You might not have felt it yet, but when it hits, it'll feel like peace, not hype, not a surge of adrenaline, just peace. That's how alignment feels, not loud. It's where your soul stops striving and starts resting, because you finally realize the goal was never speed, it was surrender. You are not lost. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are being aligned. And when the blessing arrives, you won't need to chase it. It will find you, standing right where obedience placed you, in the exact position where heaven always intended for you to be. Not all blessings are additions. Some are disruptions, not explosive, but holy stillness. The moment when you realize you didn't miss it, you didn't fall behind, you weren't too late. You were being prepared in real time for something that was never outside of God's reach. Alignment is the secret path to breakthrough. It's the path of quiet yeses, the path of obedience when no one is watching, the path of releasing control over how you thought things should happen. It's where you stop begging and start becoming. Some don't come to give you more of what you've already had. They come to break the cycle of what's been holding you back for years. And when that kind of blessing shows up, it doesn't always feel like comfort. It feels like confrontation, because God doesn't just want to bless your surface. He wants to bless your patterns, the ones you've normalized, the ones you inherited, the ones you've been repeating without even realizing. Some blessings don't arrive like gifts. They arrive like interruptions. They stop the rhythm of dysfunction. They collide with the momentum of compromise. They challenge what you've learned to live with and call normal. But God never called you to survive a cycle. He called you to break one. And the blessing that's coming is about more than overflow. It's about freedom, not just in your hands, but in your heart, your mind, your bloodline. There are patterns that have been circling your life: rejection, scarcity, fear of love, mistrust, shame, self-sabotage. Patterns that started long before you. Patterns that were passed down, spoken over you, modeled for you. And you've done your best to manage them. But now God is sending a blessing that doesn't just help you cope. It rewrites what's possible. It disrupts the narrative. It breaks what was repeating. Because God isn't just delivering breakthrough for you. He's shifting the story for everyone coming after you. And this is why the blessing has taken time. Because it wasn't just about giving you more. It was about giving you different, something clean, something new, something uncontaminated by old systems and small thinking. This blessing had to be forged in holiness, protected from patterns of comparison and pride, covered from voices that would try to reduce it to a temporary fix. What's coming wasn't built on old foundations. It's built on obedience, healing, and spiritual integrity. God's not interested in putting new favor on old mindsets, so He lets things shake. He lets the familiar fall apart. He pulls you out of the familiar rhythm so He can rewire what you believe about yourself. Because if He gave you the blessing before He broke the pattern, you'd recycle it right back into dysfunction. And He loves you too much to let that happen. So He started by showing you what's not working anymore. He revealed who couldn't go with you. He made the old coping mechanisms stop producing, not because you failed, but because you're being freed. And that freedom starts with disruption. The moment you realize the pattern stops with you, the trauma ends here, the cycle is broken now, the silence ends in this generation, the fear will not dominate the next season, the insecurity will not rule over your decisions. The curse is broken, not because you tried harder, but because you surrendered deeper. The kind of blessing God is sending will feel unfamiliar because you've never seen it before. It won't look like what others have. It won't come through the same channels. It won't require you to beg. It will require you to believe, not just that it's coming, but that you're allowed to receive it. That you are no longer bound to what was. That the old you doesn't get to define the new season. That the patterns have lost their power because your identity is now rooted in a different truth. This is what God does. He doesn't just bless you with more money or better relationships or higher platforms. He blesses you with wholeness, with clarity, with peace that silences the chaos you thought was permanent. He sends a blessing that confronts what tried to define you. And in doing so, He makes you into the cycle breaker, the history shifter, the generational pioneer you were always meant to be. You're not just about to be blessed, you're about to be reset, and it won't look like anything you've known, because it's not based on what you've earned or what's been done before. It's based on who He is and who He's called you to be. This blessing is not just for comfort, it's for consecration, not just for provision, but for legacy. You're about to carry something that changes everything, not just for you, but for everyone attached to your name. Silence doesn't mean absence, and stillness doesn't mean stagnation. Just because God hasn't said anything lately doesn't mean He stopped working. In fact, the more strategic the move, the quieter God tends to be. When heaven is rearranging what you can't see, you won't always feel confirmation. You won't always sense progress. Because God's strategy is too deep to be tracked by your emotions. He works in silence not to confuse you, but to protect the sacredness of the process. It's easy to trust God when you feel Him, when the signs are obvious, when prayers get answered quickly. But real trust grows in the silent days, when you can't trace the next step, when you can't measure the momentum, when your worship echoes into what feels like a void. Those are the days that build roots, that test motives, that purify your why, because it's in the silence that God doesn't just build your blessing, He builds you. What if the silence is the shield? What if He's hiding you from distractions, from manipulation, from counterfeit offers dressed like opportunity? What if the stillness you hate is the very thing saving you from stepping into something too small for what He has in mind? We often assume movement means God is with us, but some of His greatest moves happen when He holds you still long enough for divine positioning to take root. Look at Scripture. When Jesus was on trial, He was silent. When He stood before Pilate, He said nothing. Why? Because power doesn't need to perform to prove itself. And sometimes, when God is setting up a divine reversal or resurrection in your life, He won't say a word, because what's about to happen speaks for itself. God doesn't need your full understanding to execute His perfect plan. He needs your agreement, and that agreement is often forged in the tension of the unknown. When your faith is not being fueled by visible results, but by internal conviction, that's when your faith matures. Not when you feel encouraged, but when you stay consistent even while feeling confused. Silent days are not wasted days. They are holy days. Days where heaven is writing what your eyes can't yet see. Days when the script is still being finalized, when angels are being dispatched, when delays are being removed, when decisions are being shifted. It's spiritual logistics. And while you sit in what feels like a holding pattern, heaven is preparing a landing for something you didn't even know you needed. It's hard to keep trusting when nothing is speaking. But that's why God trained you to hear more than voices. He trained you to follow peace, and peace is not always loud. It's often the calm in the middle of no information. It's the settled yes when logic says no. It's the quiet confirmation that you're not crazy, you're just called. And right now, you're being kept still because movement would misalign you. You have not been forgotten. You have not been punished. You are being preserved. There are seasons where God slows you down not to frustrate you, but to separate you from what would have distracted you. Not every delay is a denial. Some are detours that keep you from spiritual traffic that would have wrecked your momentum later. What you see as silence, God sees as sacred strategy. So stop looking for noise. Stop needing the next sign to stay faithful. Stop asking for updates when God is inviting you into unwavering trust. The silence is not empty. It's full of invisible movement, full of divine intention, full of shifts that have yet to surface. If you could see what He's doing right now, you'd rest instead of panic. You'd praise instead of worry. You'd wait with confidence instead of anxiety. God isn't late. He's layering. He's lining up moments that will collide in divine timing. And when it hits, it won't trickle. It will pour. The silence will break. The stillness will end. The season will shift. And what once felt like spiritual inactivity will suddenly reveal itself as divine architecture. Keep walking. Keep trusting. Keep the altar of your heart burning, even when the fire feels dim. These silent days are not working against you. They are working for you. God is not just doing something around you. He's doing something in you, something unshakable, something permanent, something that silence can't hide forever. You didn't imagine it. The pressure really did increase. The heaviness got thicker. The confusion came out of nowhere. The mental exhaustion, the strange delays, the unexpected conflicts, it wasn't random. It wasn't just life. The intensity you've been feeling is a sign, not that something's wrong, but that something is close. And the enemy knows it. That's why the attack intensified, because you're closer than ever to the moment that changes everything. Spiritual warfare always increases before significant spiritual shifts. Right before birth, there's pain. Right before breakthrough, there's pressure. Right before clarity, there's chaos. The enemy doesn't waste energy. He targets what threatens him. So if you've felt under spiritual siege lately, it's because you've been positioned for a move of God you can't yet see, but hell has already sensed. There's a reason the distractions multiplied. There's a reason the old wounds tried to reopen. There's a reason fear suddenly resurfaced. The resistance is actually your confirmation. What you thought was punishment is actually proof. You don't fight storms in seasons of nothing. You fight storms when the wind is shifting, when the ground is about to move, when you're getting too close to the promise for the enemy to ignore you. And instead of using visible weapons, the enemy often goes after your mind, your focus, your hope, your identity, because if he can't stop God's plan, he'll try to convince you to abandon it yourself. This is why you've been feeling stretched, why your emotions feel tangled, why old temptations resurfaced. Because something in the spirit is transitioning and the enemy is trying to block your agreement with it. If he can get you to doubt, he weakens your declaration. If he can wear you out emotionally, he dulls your spiritual discernment. But here's the truth. What's intensifying is not your defeat. It's your awakening. You're not breaking down. You're breaking through. God doesn't allow attack without preparing authority. He doesn't allow shaking without strengthening. He's not surprised by what you're facing. He's already given you what you need to withstand it. The enemy may have increased the pressure, but heaven has already increased your capacity. You've grown in ways you haven't even realized yet. You've matured where you used to panic. You've stayed when you used to run. You've prayed instead of complained. That's not weakness. That's growth. That's proof you've been built for what's coming. You are not a target because you're weak. You're a target because you're dangerous, because your yes to God has weight, because your obedience has ripple effects, because your voice carries authority the enemy wants to silence, but he's already too late. The very fact that you're still standing, still watching, still believing, that's your victory. That's the evidence that the attack hasn't won, that the assignment to discourage you has failed, that the attempt to detour you has only deepened your dependence on God. The devil doesn't attack what he doesn't fear, and he fears what's been prophesied over your life. He fears the anointing you carry. He fears the generational impact of your breakthrough. So he'll try to distract you with temporary frustration, hoping you'll miss the permanent shift that's taking shape. But you won't miss it, because God is faithful. And the attack that tried to crush you will become the catalyst that launches you. This is not the time to retreat. This is not the moment to lower your expectations. This is the hour to lift your eyes, anchor your faith, and speak with authority. Because the attack may have intensified, but so has your revelation. You're starting to see it for what it is. Not punishment, but preparation. Not delay, but acceleration. Not failure, but formation. What you're walking through now is the loudest evidence yet that heaven is about to move in your life in a visible, undeniable way. And the enemy is terrified of what happens when you realize that. So let the attack intensify. It only reveals how close your blessing truly is. You're not under, you're being elevated. And what felt like a breakdown is about to be the moment that God proves He was with you all along, building a victory that was bigger than your battle. Somewhere along the way, you were convinced that you had to be flawless before you could be favored, that if you made one mistake, you'd forfeit the blessing. That unless your prayers were perfectly worded, your life perfectly aligned, and your emotions perfectly controlled, you wouldn't be qualified to receive what God promised. But that's not the gospel. That's fear disguised as religion. And it's time to break the lie. God's blessings were never built on your perfection. They are anchored in His grace. The cross didn't require your performance. It required your surrender. So why would the blessings that flow from it require anything different? You don't earn God's gifts. You receive them by faith. And faith doesn't mean you've got it all together. It means you believe in the one who holds it all, even when you're still falling apart. If perfection was the price, none of us would qualify. But God delights in using imperfect vessels to pour out perfect promises, because when it happens, only He can get the glory. God's blessings are not delayed because you're struggling. They're not withheld because you had a weak moment. God sees the private tears, the honest repentance, the fight to keep showing up when your strength is low. And He's not shaming you, He's shaping you. Blessings are not rewards for performance. They are often acts of mercy given at the very moment we feel the least deserving. Not because we tricked God into blessing us, but because grace always moves toward the humble. Your imperfections are not a barrier to God. They're the canvas He loves to work on. He's not intimidated by your insecurity. He's not surprised by your inconsistency. He's not changing His mind because you had a bad day, or a weak month, or a season of doubt. The calling hasn't been cancelled. The promise hasn't been revoked. The timing hasn't been destroyed. What God authored in your life does not depend on your perfection to be completed. It depends on your willingness to trust Him anyway. Think about David, chosen by God, anointed in private, destined for greatness. And still he fell. He failed morally, emotionally, spiritually. But did God remove His favor? No. Because what God starts in grace, He sustains in grace. He disciplines, yes. He corrects, He heals. But He does not abandon. His blessings are not fragile. They are forged in covenant. And covenant doesn't break when weakness shows up. It holds even tighter. The enemy would love for you to believe that your flaws cancel your future, that your doubts disqualify your destiny, that your struggle discredits your anointing. But God is not consulting your performance to determine your blessing. He's looking at your heart. He's watching for surrender. He's honoring the quiet moments of obedience no one else sees. And while you obsess over where you fell short, God is focused on where He's still leading you. This is what makes grace so radical. It's offensive to self-righteousness. It's confusing to the legalistic mind. But it is the very essence of who God is. He gives unearned favor. He releases blessing not just in spite of your imperfection, but sometimes because of it. Because it's in your weakness that His power is made perfect. It's in your humility that heaven draws near. You don't have to clean yourself up to receive it. You just have to open your hands. Stop waiting until you feel ready. Stop disqualifying yourself from what God already decided you were worthy to carry. Stop believing that your history is stronger than His mercy. The blessing coming to you isn't based on how perfectly you walked. It's based on how faithfully He loves. And His love does not falter. It doesn't shift. It doesn't hesitate. It runs toward the broken, the tired, the real. So when the blessing arrives, and it will, don't shrink back. Don't wonder if you deserve it. Don't hesitate to receive it. Embrace it with the humility that says, I know I didn't earn this, but I know who gave it. Let the blessing remind you that God sees you through the lens of redemption, not rejection. Let it reinforce that grace always outruns guilt. That mercy is stronger than mistakes, and that God finishes what He starts, not because we are perfect, but because He is faithful. Every blessing you've been praying for comes wrapped in something deeper than comfort. It comes with weight, with trust, with the quiet reality that God never gives gifts without purpose. You may have asked for increase, for opportunity, for overflow, but what's arriving is more than a moment of breakthrough. It's an invitation into greater responsibility. And that's not punishment. That's privilege. That's God saying, I trust you to carry what matters to me. Blessings aren't just rewards. They are resources, assignments, entrustments. And when they land in your life, they don't just shift your atmosphere. They stretch your character. They call you higher. They refine how you think, how you lead, how you speak, how you love. God doesn't give more so you can do less. He gives more so you can become more anchored, more wise, more sensitive to His Spirit, more aligned with His heart. We often imagine the blessing as the finish line, But in the kingdom, blessings are launching pads. God doesn't bless you so your life gets easier. He blesses you so his kingdom gets clearer through you. That means what you carry now matters more than ever, because blessing attracts responsibility like a magnet, and with that comes pressure, but it also brings power, divine empowerment to walk out the new territory you've been given, not in your own strength, but in his presence. The increase you receive is not just to comfort you, it's to confirm you, to remind you that your life is part of something larger, that your influence isn't random, that your promotion isn't luck, that your platform, your voice, your new position, they're not there to elevate your name, they're there to echo his. And the moment you recognize this, the blessing becomes sacred. It becomes weighty. It becomes holy. God is not interested in giving you what you can't steward. That's why he prepares your soul before he promotes your season. Because increase without integrity is a curse in disguise. But when the two are aligned, when the internal maturity matches the external opportunity, the blessing doesn't break you. It builds others. It multiplies, it extends beyond you, it becomes legacy. Responsibility may sound like a burden, but it's actually a sign of divine trust. Think of Joseph. The blessing wasn't the coat, it was the capacity to carry nations through famine. The coat was just the introduction. The real blessing was the burden he learned to carry with wisdom. Or think of Esther. The crown wasn't the reward, it was the doorway into a moment of deliverance. Her comfort became a platform for courage, and that's what happens when God blesses you. He expands your reach to match his purpose. So if the blessing feels heavy, you're not doing it wrong. You're carrying it right. You're feeling the weight of being trusted. You're stepping into the tension of obedience at scale. And that means you've graduated from begging for small wins to walking in big assignments. Not everyone sees it. Not everyone will understand it. But God does. And he walks with those who carry his heart as much as his favor. This is why your character still matters more than your gifts, because you can be talented and still misuse the blessing. You can be seen and still misrepresent the one who sent it. The blessing is holy, and holy things are meant to be stewarded, not just celebrated. That means protecting your motives, watching your words, guarding your habits, surrounding yourself with accountability. Not out of fear, but out of honor, because when God trusts you with something significant, it means he intends for it to multiply, not just through your hands, but through your life. Don't fear the responsibility. Let it refine you. Let it remind you that favor isn't random, that you were created for more than survival, that your influence is a tool, not a trophy, and that with every open door comes a deeper call to humility, to discipline, to vision. The kind of vision that doesn't just ask, what do I get out of this blessing, but rather, what is this blessing asking of me? If you've been entrusted with more, it's because God has expanded what he sees in you. And that means you don't just carry the blessing, you become the blessing. The one who changes rooms, the one who lifts others, the one who walks with both strength and surrender. You're not just called to be blessed, you're called to be a carrier of purpose. Sometimes the delay isn't about God withholding the blessing. It's about him making sure you've become the kind of person who can carry it without losing yourself. We pray bold prayers, ask for big things, declare faith-filled promises, but rarely pause to ask the deeper question, am I ready for what I've been asking for? Not ready with excitement or desire, but ready with discipline, surrender, and capacity. There's a version of you that prayed, and there's a version of you that must rise to receive what that prayer invited. The space in between those versions is where transformation happens. God doesn't just respond to prayer with results. He responds with process. Because the answered prayer isn't always a thing, it's a person you're becoming, a person who can handle the weight of the very thing you used to cry out for. You asked for healing, But are you willing to walk in wholeness, to let go of the identity you built around your pain? You asked for a relationship, but are you rooted in Christ deeply enough to love without idolizing someone? You asked for influence, but are you secure enough to speak with authority without needing applause? These are not tests of worth. These are invitations to depth, to maturity, to stewardship. God is never interested in giving you something that will replace him in your heart, and if what you're asking for has the potential to take his place, he'll wait, not because he's cruel, but because he loves you too much to bless you into spiritual blindness. He doesn't want your hands full if your heart is drifting, so he forms you first. He puts you through seasons that feel like contradictions, stripping, silence, closed doors, all while preparing you to carry what you once thought you were already ready for. Readiness isn't about strength, it's about structure. Are your habits built for what you're stepping into? Are your boundaries strong enough to protect the blessing? Are your convictions deep enough to keep you anchored when favor tries to lift you too fast? These are the questions heaven asks in secret, long before breakthrough arrives in public. Because if you skip the formation, the blessing won't last. And God doesn't want to give you something that becomes your undoing. Sometimes God won't change your circumstance until you change your posture, until your spirit stops rushing him and starts recognizing that he's not slow, he's strategic. He's not being silent, he's being surgical. Cutting away what would weaken you, strengthening what needs to last, tuning your ears to hear not just answers, but instructions. Because the moment the blessing arrives, the time to prepare is over. And you can't build endurance in the middle of elevation. That must be done beforehand. This is why he allows pressure before the promise, because pressure reveals who you are when no one's watching. It refines your why. It cleanses your desire, and it shows heaven that you're not just interested in the blessing, you're surrendered to the process, that you're not in love with the outcome, you're anchored in the one who controls it. That even if it takes longer than you expected, your faith isn't for sale, and your obedience isn't conditional. So before the next door opens, ask yourself with honesty and humility, have I become the kind of person who can carry what I once cried for? If not, don't despair. That's not a reason to give up. That's an invitation to let God finish what he started, to let him shape your foundation before building the platform, to let him root you so deeply in his presence that nothing the blessing brings can shake you. Because the truth is, you're closer than you think, not just to what you prayed for, but to who you've been becoming. All the hidden growth, all the quiet obedience, all the small yeses. They've been preparing you for this. And heaven doesn't waste preparation. When the time comes, you won't have to strive to prove yourself. You'll simply step into it, confident, humble, ready. You keep looking ahead, waiting for something to start, hoping the shift will show up one day, somewhere out there. But the truth is, what God is doing in your life isn't a future event waiting to be scheduled. It's already in motion. It's already moving toward you. The blessing is not stagnant. It's not stalled. It's alive, dynamic, traveling through dimensions you can't see, passing through layers of timing, alignment, and divine orchestration. What looks delayed to your eyes is already in transit in the spirit. Heaven doesn't operate according to your calendar. God is not late. He's not slow. His movements are perfectly timed, and they are often invisible long before they are undeniable. That's why your feelings can't always be trusted to tell you what's really happening. Feelings say, nothing's changing. Faith says something's shifting, even if I can't measure it yet, because faith doesn't wait until it sees, it discerns that motion is happening in the realm of the unseen. The blessing isn't sitting still waiting for you to earn it. It's already headed your way, responding to prayers you forgot you prayed, unfolding in the background while you wonder if God even heard you. Think of Daniel. His answer was released the moment he prayed. But it had to pass through warfare in the heavens to get to him. The delay wasn't denial, it was resistance, but it never stopped the blessing from moving. It just revealed how determined God was to get it to him. That's happening with you right now. The conversation you're not part of, the door you haven't seen yet, the opportunity that feels like it came out of nowhere. They're not random. They're evidence, proof that the blessing has been moving the entire time. That the silence wasn't the absence of movement, it was the atmosphere required for precision. You weren't forgotten, you were being set up. This is why you can't base your expectation on your timeline. Because your timeline is shaped by visibility, but God's is shaped by sovereignty, and his sovereignty often allows silence to test your sensitivity. Will you recognize what's moving even when it hasn't arrived? Will you praise before the door opens? Will you prepare while the delivery is still in transit? These are the choices that separate passive hope from active faith. Active faith says, if it's already on the way, I better get ready for it. Nasu. So you start rearranging your inner world to make space. You start speaking differently. You stop settling. You stop tolerating environments that contradict what you're believing for. Because you know something's coming. And you don't want to miss it because you were too busy doubting what was already dispatched. The enemy wants to convince you that nothing's happening, so you'll sit in disappointment. He wants to keep you distracted with delay, so you'll stop moving in faith. But the truth is, every step you've taken in obedience has already activated something in heaven. Every moment you stayed faithful when no one was watching sent a signal. Every time you gave, served, surrendered, forgave, those weren't empty motions. They were signals. They told heaven you were in position, that you were ready for what's next. So here's the shift. Stop saying, one day I'll be blessed. Start declaring, my blessing is already moving. I'm walking into it. I'm aligning with it. I'm matching its pace. This isn't wishful thinking, it's prophetic positioning. It's understanding that God works in layers, and just because you don't see the top layer doesn't mean the foundation isn't already finished. You're not at the beginning of the story. You're standing in the middle of momentum. Look closer. The signs are already around you. The atmosphere has changed. The distractions feel different. The doors that used to hold you are losing their grip. Your vision is sharpening, your prayers are maturing, your hunger is increasing. That's not random, that's alignment. That's heaven's way of confirming that something is no longer coming. It's arriving. You don't need to chase it. Just stay in position. Stay in surrender. Keep doing the small things with big faith. Keep speaking with clarity. Keep waking up with expectancy, because you're not waiting for something to begin. You're being drawn into what already started. What God released didn't stop moving just because you got tired. It's still on course, and when it intersects with your life, it'll make sense why the journey felt so long, because what's coming is too great to rush. There is a language that shifts atmospheres before your circumstances ever change. It's not shallow affirmation. It's not positive thinking wrapped in religious words. It's declaration, prophetic, biblical, spirit-aligned declaration. It is the audacity to speak out loud what heaven has already written, even when everything around you suggests the opposite. Because in the kingdom, you don't wait to speak once you see. You speak because you believe. You speak to shape what's coming. You speak to announce what's already been set in motion. The enemy is terrified of a believer who knows how to use their voice. Because the tongue is not just a tool of communication. It is a spiritual weapon. Proverbs tells us life and death are in its power. James says it steers your life like a rudder on a ship, and heaven responds to faith-filled speech like an army responding to orders. Not because your voice is magic, but because your agreement activates movement in the spirit. When you speak in alignment with God's word, you don't manipulate outcomes, you align with them. You step into the authority Christ gave you to partner with heaven's will. You begin to cancel what was never meant to stay. You begin to call forth what was already on the way, because the more you speak what God said, the more your mind submits, your emotions agree, your actions adjust, and your future begins to reflect it. This is why spiritual warfare often begins with suggestion. The enemy doesn't just attack with events, he attacks with thoughts. He wants to control your mouth by polluting your mind. Because if he can make you speak defeat, fear, lack, or shame, he knows your own words will start building walls around the very blessing you're praying for. But when you learn to resist the urge to echo what you feel and instead declare what you believe, something shifts. Darkness doesn't have authority over a voice that's submitted to truth. You may not see the full breakthrough yet, but that's exactly when your voice matters most. The moment between seed and harvest is the moment to speak, not out of desperation, but out of conviction, out of the certainty that what you declare in faith doesn't return void, out of the trust that God doesn't tease his people with promises, he fulfills them, and your declaration is how you build a landing strip for that fulfillment. So start declaring the promises of God over your life like they're already alive in your hands. Speak healing even when pain lingers. Speak provision even when the numbers don't add up. Speak direction even when the path isn't lit. Speak restoration even when the relationship feels impossible. Don't wait for feelings to catch up. Speak until your soul believes it. Speak until your environment begins to reflect it. Speak until doubt gets quiet and faith grows louder than fear. This isn't pretending, it's prophesying. It's partnering with the Holy Spirit to write the future God already ordained. It's choosing to echo heaven instead of rehearsing past wounds. And every time you do, something builds. Layer by layer, word by word, atmosphere by atmosphere, your declarations are building the framework for what God is delivering. Even Jesus, when facing death, didn't stop speaking. He spoke from the cross. He declared, "It is finished." And if the Son of God needed to use his voice to release heaven's agenda, how much more must we? There's power in your agreement, power in your utterance, power in speaking light into places that have only known shadow. So don't let silence become your default. Don't let defeat become your dialect. You are not a victim of your environment. You are a voice in your environment. You don't echo pain, you announce purpose. You don't mirror fear, you declare freedom. And the more you speak from a place of rooted identity in Christ, the more your reality begins to bow to the authority of his promises. Keep declaring, even if nothing looks different yet, especially then, because heaven is listening. Angels are moving, strongholds are breaking, and your words are doing more than you see. You're not just talking, you're transforming. And the blessing you've been waiting for is now following the sound of your faith. This isn't the accidental overflow of good timing. This isn't something you stumbled into by chance or manipulated your way toward through effort. What's happening now? What's unfolding around you? What's shifting within you? This has always been part of the design. You're not reaching for something random. You're stepping into something that was crafted with your name on it from the very beginning. What felt delayed was never denied. What felt out of reach was never off course. Heaven was simply waiting for the moment where your heart, your faith, your maturity, and God's timing aligned. This is not just about blessing. This is about identity, about inheritance, about calling, about the beautiful truth that what belongs to you in God's kingdom cannot be stolen, cannot be hijacked, cannot be missed. Not when you walk in obedience and keep your eyes on the one who called you. You were never fighting to earn it. You were learning to grow into it. The path was about formation, not punishment. Every step forward was removing the fear, the pride, the lies, the wounds that would have caused you to misuse the very thing you now stand in front of. You see, the blessing you're about to walk into isn't just a gift. It's a sign, a confirmation that God didn't change his mind, that your story was never derailed beyond repair, that his promises are not fragile, and his plans are not contingent on your perfection. You can't ruin what God redeems, and He's been redeeming your steps all along, even the missteps, even the detours, even the days you felt too far gone. He was never far, and He was never finished. Now you're standing at the edge of something holy, a moment where the heavens begin to echo back what you've been carrying in your heart for years. You're not stealing a blessing you don't deserve. You're arriving at the intersection of grace and promise, the place where obedience meets overflow, where faith meets fulfillment. And it's going to feel like home, not because it's easy, but because your spirit already knows it was meant to be here. This moment, this step, this breakthrough, it's not about proving anything to anyone else. It's about walking in confidence, knowing that God Himself has gone before you. It's about silencing every voice that told you it would never happen. It's about remembering that the one who formed you in the secret place never once stopped forming your future. Every hidden place of obedience has led to this. Every prayer prayed through tears has watered this ground. Every sacrifice, every surrender, every silent battle you fought when no one knew, God saw it all, and He counted it as worship. You're stepping into something that doesn't just bless you, it heals what tried to break you. It brings clarity to the confusion. It restores the years that felt wasted. It replaces the question marks with exclamation points. It redeems the silence. It shifts the atmosphere, not just around you, but through you. Because the blessing is not just about what you receive, it's about who you become as you carry it. A living testimony, a sign of God's faithfulness, a reflection of heaven's agenda on earth. This is your time, not because you forced it, but because you followed. Not because you mastered everything, but because you trusted in the middle of everything. Not because you were the strongest, but because you kept showing up, even when you felt weak. And that's exactly who God blesses, the one who surrenders, the one who says yes when it's hard, the one who walks in faith even with trembling steps. So walk in it, own it, worship through it, and never forget, this isn't the end of the story. It's the confirmation that the author never stopped writing. You're stepping into what was always yours. Not by accident, not by luck, by design. And now, heaven is watching, the earth is shifting, and the blessing is no longer coming. It's here, just like it was always meant to be. Let this be your declaration. I am not stepping into the unknown. I am stepping into what my Father prepared for me. I am not arriving late. I am right on time. I am not just blessed. I am aligned. And the rest of my story will flow from the same grace that brought me here.